Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, we carry on the best of series. We've done the best of the midfielders and we had two parts for that. And today we're looking at the best defenders in FPL. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, in today's video, I've picked the 10 best defenders from £5 million and up, in my personal opinion. If you're wondering why I'm not covering the 4.0 and 4.5 defenders, I've already done a video earlier last week where I looked at the best budget players, and within that, I looked at the best £4 million and the best £4.5 million defenders. So we're just looking at £5 million and up today. And when I'm ranking these, I am taking into account everything. I'm taking into account their price, and if they are very, very expensive, despite them being a good option, that will probably pull them down slightly. I'm looking at fixtures, I'm looking at the data from last year, but I'm also taking into account what I think their role will be this year coming up. In 10th and 9th, I have two Manchester City defenders. In 10th, I do have a Kanji, but this is completely dependent on what we see in pre-season. All I wanted to do here was essentially pick a £5 million City defender. It could be a Kanji, it could be Ake. You choose who you want. I think they would still be in 10th for me, and I still believe that John Stones is worth the 5.5 price tag. I think that John Stones is slightly more nailed than the rest of the City defence, and I also think that playing in the slightly more advanced role, yes, it's only sort of a CDM role on the ball. It does just get him the opportunity, as you can see by his expected assists towards the end of last season. It does shoot it up slightly because he's just getting slightly closer to goal from open play. So I don't mind some of the £5 million City options if you want to risk it. Could be a Kanji, could be Ake. Let me know down below who you think is the better option. But for me, it's worth spending the extra money on John Stones. And we know how good City's fixtures are to open the season. Yes, they have Newcastle in game week 2, but other than that, it's a strong start. Burnley away, Sheffield United away, Fulham at home and West Ham away. These are good fixtures to start. And a lot of us are going to own Erling Haaland anyway. Maybe you don't want to take the risk on a City attacker. It feels pretty strange going into a season with only one City asset. Of course, Pep Roulette is the real issue. As you can see last season, 78 minutes per game for a Kanji, 80 minutes per game for John Stones. So these players, when they play, they tend to start. And they don't tend to come off the bench too often if they don't feature. And that is the good thing about the City defenders. And City players in general, a lot of them don't tend to make cameo appearances. We've seen for large spells that Pep Guardiola doesn't necessarily make as many subs. That being said, the squad is a little bit thinner this year, so potentially we might see a few more subs, but I don't mind them for that reason. Expected FPL points was relatively similar, but John Stones just edging it. You can see John Stones also had pretty decent data at 0.13 non-penalty expected goal involvement, and as we know, City were the best defence in the league last season. So I fully appreciate why you would want to pick a City defender, and I think if you are to pick one, John Stones would be the one for me. But you can see he is only in 9th, and the reason purely for that is Pep Roulette. And also, John Stones' data isn't fantastic. There are defenders with better data for a cheaper price. That being said, they do keep a lot of clean sheets, City, even with Edison making a few mistakes last season. So let me know down below in the comments, do you currently have a Man City defender? And if so, is it John Stones? Let's move on to 8th and 7th. So in 7th and 8th, we have Kieran Trippier and Pedro Porro. And these are two of the defenders with the best attacking data in the Premier League. And we are talking about competing with the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold. So you would expect them to be slightly higher, but they both have slight issues attached to them. We'll start with Kieran Trippier, and the issue with Trippier is the fixtures. Now, you could say he was fixture-proof. I mean, last year, I think he scored a goal against Manchester City. Newcastle kept a lot of clean sheets too, but the fixtures are really, really bad. I mean, in those opening 5, you are looking at 5 teams that are comfortably in the top half of the table, especially those first 4. Villa and Brighton were really, really good last season. We expect them to continue to look good as well. City and Liverpool is not really good from a defensive perspective. I think if Kieran Trippier had better fixtures, though, he would be up at 70 or 80% owned. You could actually argue, maybe you don't agree, but you can maybe argue that Kieran Trippier is underpriced this season. If you think Trent is 8 million, Kieran Trippier was playing for a much better defence last season, and his data is very, very similar to Trent. So I don't mind the idea of Kieran Trippier, and I guarantee at some point this season, most of us own him, but I just don't see the value in starting the season when he's at 6.5 and there are defenders with slightly lower attacking threat and maybe a slightly lower chance for a clean sheet from their team perspective, but with much, much better fixtures. It just doesn't make sense for me to start with Kieran Trippier. But as you can see here, when he plays, he starts. Really good for his expected FPL points. One of the most creative defenders in the league, only behind Trent Alexander-Arnold, who we'll discuss later in the video. And Newcastle were the second best team in the league for expected goals conceded last season. So I do love Trippier. I have no issue if you want to pick him and just hope that Newcastle can pick up stuff in those opening 5. But for me, I'll probably look at him from sort of game week 6, 7 onwards. Maybe on my first wild card, I'll look to bring Trippier in. Pedro Porro has really nice fixtures, actually. After the first 2, Spurs got on a really, really nice run of fixtures. And as you can see here, Spurs were the 7th best defence in the league last season. I know a lot of people laugh at that and they think that Spurs are absolutely shocking defensively. 7th isn't bad at all, and they were actually close to kind of 3rd and 4th. And Pedro Porro's data was really, really good. You can see here a 0.33 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which is almost as good as Kieran Trippier. And you can see one thing that he has that Kieran Trippier doesn't have is actually decent non-penalty expected goals. So I like Pedro Porro. My issue with him is, number one, he is still a slight rotation risk in my opinion, even though I do believe he'll be first choice under Postecoglou. And the other reason is, despite the fact that Postecoglou does play with pretty high fullbacks, they do play quite an attacking role. It is a 4 at the back formation that we're expecting Spurs to line up in. And all of Pedro Porro's data last season was in a back 5, where he was essentially, as you can see by the touch maps, playing as a right midfielder. So we'll have to see, does he look as attacking in a right-back formation, and is he nailed enough under Postecoglou? The other thing that I would say about both that I like is they were both on a lot of set pieces last season. I would expect Kieran Trippier to definitely continue with that. Pedro Porro, now that Maddison has signed, may be off a lot of corners and free kicks. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But these are 2 excellent options. Kieran Trippier, when his fixtures improve, I think will absolutely be in a lot of our teams. And Pedro Porro, if he's nailed and still looks relatively attacking in that right-back role, I think will be an absolute gem this season. In 5th and 6th, we have 2 more attacking defenders, but in this case, 2 different issues to what we saw with Trippier and Pedro Porro. Those 2 players are Reece James and Ben Chilwell, both coming in at 5.5 million. Ownership would suggest at the moment that Reece James is the more popular of the 2, but I would argue, as you can see here, that for game week 1, and I'm not saying for the season, but for game week 1, I would probably argue I prefer Ben Chilwell. Just very quickly on the fixtures for Chelsea, very similar to Spurs. Not the best opening 2, especially from a defensive perspective. Liverpool, I think, will score. West Ham away is not an easy fixture, again, to keep a clean sheet in. But from game week 3 onwards, in a similar way to Spurs, really, really nice fixtures, especially game week 3 and 4, 2 home games against 2 teams that you think they could keep clean sheets against. The issue that we've got with both Reece James and Ben Chilwell is they were absolutely ravaged with injuries last season. They were spent large spells injured, and they couldn't seem to maintain a string of games together, which didn't allow them to get their match fitness up. And as a result, as you can see by the data, it was a quite disappointing season for them, even when they did play. We're seeing Reece James at a 0.23 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which is the lowest we've seen since he broke into the Prem. And Chilwell is at a 0.2 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which again is the lowest that we've seen since he's gone to Chelsea. So these are 2 defenders that usually we're seeing their data sitting at about 0.3, 0.4 non-penalty expected goal involvement as the lowest. And especially Ben Chilwell tends to have really, really good goal threat. Reece James tends to have higher assist threat. But last season, they both struggled. As you can see, when we're looking at sort of expected FPL points, Ben Chilwell coming out slightly on top, but that's just due to him having slightly higher goal threat, whereas Reece James had slightly higher assist threat. Chelsea were the 6th best defence in the league last season, which is pretty shocking. We said that Spurs 7th was quite surprising, but Chelsea being the 6th best defence is even more surprising. We'll have to see how they line up, obviously, under Pochettino. We'll have to see how high up the pitch both Reece James and Chilwell get, and we'll have to see if they are fit to start the season. The reason that I say that I think Chilwell is a slightly better pick for game week 1 is I just feel like he's slightly closer to full fitness. I don't think either of them are there yet, but Ben Chilwell looks a lot fitter in pre-season. There have been rumours that fitness tests have taken place and that Chilwell ranked in the top 3 for those, but he definitely looks closer to being at full fitness, whereas there have been rumours, pretty much confirmed now, that Reece James might have had to have some surgery taking place and he might have been out for a few months as a result. He doesn't actually need that surgery apparently, but the fact that they are still running tests to see if he needs the surgery tells me that he's not fully fit and he must still have some kind of discomfort there. So Reece James, I don't think, played more than 5 successive games in the Premier League last season. I know Chilwell struggled too, but if I was to bank on one of them getting injured before the other, I would probably bank on Reece James. Hopefully they both stay fit and hopefully they can both have a good season for Chelsea. But for me, I just feel like Chilwell is slightly closer to being there. And also, like I said, Chilwell tends to have slightly better goal threat, Reece James slightly higher assist threat. If they are both fit, they are both steals at 5.5. I can almost guarantee that they will be excellent options for game week 3 and onwards. It's just whether you think they will stay fit or not. So in 3rd and 4th, we have 2 of the most popular FPL assets in the defence this season. That is Trent Alexander-Arnold and Pervis Estupiñán. I think these are both excellent options, and throughout pre-season, they've been in a lot of my drafts. Estupiñán in particular has been in a hell of a lot. The reason they're in 3rd and 4th is just simply that I think there are 2 slightly better assets. But I will be honest, 1 to 4 are pretty much nailed in all of my drafts. I tend to have at least 3 of them. In some of them, I've had all 4, but most drafts tend to have 3 of the top 4. They are interchangeable, but I'll try and explain why I've slightly gone in the direction that I have. Estupiñán is a great option. You can see, at the time of me recording this, And I should note, if anything seems a little bit off, I'm pre-recording this a few days ahead just because I'm actually on holiday by the time that you're watching this. But Purvest opinion at the time of me recording this is above 50% ownership, mainly because, number one, the 3 opening fixtures are absolutely excellent. Number two, you can see Brighton were the 5th best defence for expected goals conceded in the Premier League last season, so they're a really good defence. And Estepinian was pretty attacking, a 0.24 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which was better than Reece James and Chilwell last season. The reason that I've got him in 4th and not 3rd, 2nd or 1st is simply because I'm just expecting a slight drop-off from Brighton on a number of fronts. Firstly, they are now competing in Europe, and whilst that won't be an issue for the opening 3 game weeks where their fixtures are really good, I do expect that to have an impact on their season. The second reason is they have sold Caicedo. Well, they are very likely to sell Caicedo, again, at the time we're recording this, and they have sold McAllister. They are 2 of the players that have sat in the spine of that team for a while now, and they looked so good last season. And I feel like that will impact them both defensively and offensively. I don't feel like they'll hold the ball quite as well unless they make some really, really smart replacements. I just don't see them being as strong through the spine of their team. So I guess I'm expecting Estepinian to have another strong season. Otherwise, I wouldn't be picking him. And I do expect him to start well with those opening 3 fixtures. And again, 3 of the opening 4 are at home as well for Brighton. I just think there'll be a slight drop-off, and as a result, I've currently got him in 4th. But he is excellent value at 5. And to be honest, I think probably 0.5 underpriced. I think he probably should have come in at 5.5 million. In 3rd, we have Trent, and it's obviously worth noting, if we were not looking at price and just looking at how good of an option are they, Trent would be so comfortably in 1st for me because he's done it season upon season, and he always has the best data in the Premier League. As you can see here, a 0.44 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which is better than a lot of the attackers that we looked at in the midfielders video and that we will be looking at in the forwards video. So you can't fault that attacking data. The only issue that we've got with Trent is that Liverpool was so stinky in the Premier League last year from a defensive perspective. They came 15th for expected goals conceded. I think we need to put in perspective how poor that is. They were close to relegation from a defensive perspective. They were much better at home, but you can see here that 3 of the opening 5 are away from home, and 2 of the opening 3 are against Chelsea away and Newcastle away. So it's certainly not a strong start to the season. If you removed that Bournemouth at home fixture, which you can't do, and it is an important fixture, I don't think we would be as tempted. But it's that Bournemouth at home in game week 2 looks like an excellent fixture for the likes of Trent, Salah, Jota, Diaz, whoever you want to pick. So it's difficult to go without him. And when we look at the attacking data, it is really strong. I just think at 8 million, for me, it's perfect pricing from FPL because it makes it tricky to get him into a team. Even if you do drop Salah, it still makes it tricky to get Trent in. So from just an overall perspective, he's still the best defensive asset in FPL for me. When you take into account these 3 million more than Estepinian and some of the other options around 5 million, at the moment, Trent hasn't been in my last 3 or 4 drafts, which sounds like a crazy thing to say. Maybe I'll regret that. I should just note on Trent, it's definitely the more flexible way to start the season to have him. Because if you have him and he doesn't look good and Liverpool still continue to concede chances, then it's so easy to drop Trent. You just sell him and then you have loads of money to play with, especially if you sell him for like a 4.5 or a £5 million defender. If you go the other way, and you don't have Trent and maybe put all of your money in your midfield and spread it across the rest of your defence, it's going to be very tricky to then go from one of your other defenders to get Trent in. It's at least 2 transfers, potentially 3. So I understand why you would want him. I would love to know down below in the comments. Let me know who your defence is at the moment, but specifically let me know, do you have Trent in your latest draft? Because at the time we're recording this, 1 in 3 managers actually still have Trent. So guys, in 1st and 2nd, no surprises because you probably realise I hadn't discussed them yet, and it is Gabriel and Luke Shaw. Again, you could justify putting Trent and Estepinian ahead of them, but I would comfortably say for me at the moment that my top 4 is Trent, Estepinian, Shaw, and Gabriel. Now, Luke Shaw, I've been going back and forth on at the start of pre-season, but he's comfortably been in most of my recent drafts. I think he is worth the extra money on what I think Onana will be priced at. I'm actually recording this before we have Onana's price, just before we're probably going to get it. And I think Onana will come in at 5 million. And if he does, I still think that Luke Shaw might be worth the extra 0.5. I know a lot of people have spoken about the fact that because Onana plays out through the back and he might play more central passes to the likes of Martinez and Mount, or maybe play a few longer balls, maybe slide in Rashford, etc., then Luke Shaw might not be as good for bonus points because he might not complete as many passes. But that is not the only part of bonus points. And Luke Shaw does a lot of the other stuff well. He creates chances. He's got good tackle percentage as well, good for interception. So it's not just the passing that gets Luke Shaw high up on bonus. And he's not overly reliant on bonus either. Manchester United were the 4th best defence in the league last season, so he should keep clean sheets too. The opening fixtures are decent over the first 3, and then they fall off a little bit for Manchester United. So I don't think that they're excellent fixtures, and I don't think that you need Luke Shaw. but I do like the idea of having some Manchester United defensive cover. So I probably would go for Onana or Luke Shaw. For me, I'm just edging Luke Shaw at the moment. You can see his data last season was a 0.18 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which is okay. It's not fantastic. It's not as good as Chilwell. It's not as good as James, Pedro Porro, Trippier, Estepinian, Trent, so they all had slightly better data, but I still feel like it's decent enough, and I would expect him to continue to improve as well, having another season with Ten Hag in the Premier League. So I like Luke Shaw as an option, but I don't think he's essential. What I do think, I was going to say I do think is essential, but I don't think it is, because you can have an Arsenal triple up in the attack. But I do think you should probably have one Arsenal defender, and in most of my drafts, that Arsenal defender is Gabriel. The fact that Saliba, Zinchenko, Timber, Ramsdale, etc. haven't been mentioned much by me isn't because I think any of them are bad options. And the reason that all of those defenders aren't in this list isn't because they're bad options. I just don't think I need to cover more than one Arsenal defender, because I think they're all good options. They've all got justification for them. Zinchenko's assist threat is higher than Gabriel, so he could be a decent option, especially if he's playing that inverted role. If Timber plays the inverted role, I think he could be an excellent option. I wouldn't pay the extra money for Ben White. And I think that Saliba and Gabriel are both going to be relatively nailed this season, depending on where Timber plays and depending on some other rotation in that back line. But for me, I just think Gabriel carries a few things. I think he is the most now just because he plays on that left side, and I feel like he's got slightly less rotation on that side. And he's also got really solid expected goals data. You can see here, 0.09 in the Premier League, and that's maintained over 2 seasons now. He's had very, very strong XG data across 2 seasons, and he's played a hell of a lot of minutes too. So I think we can reliably say that we would expect Gabriel next season to get 3 or 4 goals based on the expected data. Whether or not he finishes those chances, we'll have to wait and see. But for me, he's just such a safe option because Arsenal were the 3rd best defence in the league last season. The opening fixtures are exceptionally strong from an attacking and defensive perspective for Arsenal. He's nailed. He's got some attacking threat. I like everything about him. In almost every single one of my drafts, I've had Gabriel. The only ones that I haven't is where I've had Saka, Martinelli, and Jesus. But then I look at those drafts, and I just think it's just missing an Arsenal defender. So I'm pretty sure that going into game week 1, I will have 3 out of 4 of Gabriel, Shaw, Trent, and Estepinian. Like I said, please do let me know down below in the comments who is your current defense. So guys, there you have it. Those are the best defenders in FPL, the top 10 for me. Of course, like I said, excluding the 4 to 4.5 bracket, because I already covered that in my budget gems video last week. If you're enjoying the daily content here on this channel and you appreciate the content in this video, please do drop a like on it and make sure to subscribe as well. We are on the road to 80,000 subscribers before game week 1, and I would really, really appreciate the support. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.